Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome CEO of Vestas, Mr. Ditlev Engel.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to come and speak here today. Let me just say, dear Commissioner, dear Minister, and Svein Poulsen from Dong, here. I have not a lot to add to what has already been said by the three of you. Only one thing I would like to make sure in my presentation today is that, seen from Vestas' point of view, talking about the 2030 targets, we should at least be at 30% renewable energy and with a reduction of 40% of greenhouse gases. We can talk a lot about that the European market is one thing, but what we also have to remember is that the economic growth that takes place outside the EU, and how are we going to defend these positions with the opportunities and the knowledge that we have built for a number of years here in Europe. I would therefore like to spend the next few minutes to tell you a little bit about how it is to be a European-based company that is trying to ensure that the growing and the faster growing economies do it in a sensible way, and what we at Vestas say, that you green and grow the economy. Because there is a very clear distinction between economies that are growing and who actually need to add a capacity from energy, and countries that have a surplus of capacity and that would like to make sure how do we do it in the most cost-efficient way. And one of the risks that we obviously face here in Europe is that we may lose the opportunities that we actually have, thanks to all the things we have done in the last 30 years, if we do not make sure that even though we have economic growth challenges in Europe, that we do not give up on the opportunities to do it in a green way. At Vestas, we have been extremely engaged in the G20 work. And the G20 is very exciting because it basically constitutes 85% of the world economy. And having participated 3 years now as a leader of the Green Growth Forum, it has been actually very, very surprising how easy it has been to get an agreement with companies from across the globe on what is needed in order to green and grow the economy. We made the recommendation to heads of state in Korea in 2010, in France in 2011, and in Mexico in 2012. And even the companies changed every time, the recommendation were the same. And they were to put a price on carbon, to make sure that you have green free trade, that you end fossil fuel subsidies, and that you scale up R&D. And this is something that not only we in the B2B sector, but also in the B2C sector could very agree upon. And here comes into a little what the minister alluded to. We should not forget that the consumers and the companies related to the consumers have a huge role to play going forward in how we take these decisions. This is not just a question of what we do in the energy sector, but how we do it together with other industries that are very keen to get involved. And therefore it was extremely encouraging in my role to see how much people supported that. And I guess the real issue that people are saying is, because when you ask companies, why would you, as a major energy consumer in a growing economy, support a price on carbon? And the answer was very clear, because we know there will come a price. And the sooner that we know the price, the easier it is for us to invest. And that is why we're holding back, because we know something will happen, but we don't know what's going to happen, we are holding back. So I think that is important to remember, that what we are doing here in the EU is not just about how we service the EU, but it's also about how we create export opportunities going forward. And let me therefore just give you 2 examples of what is happening right now at G20 countries, which is outside the Eurozone, but on the other hand have a very clear vision of that they want to do things differently in their energy transformation. The first country I'd like to focus on is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is probably the most well-known country in the world for oil and gas. I was down in Riyadh a few weeks ago, and they would like to install 9,000 megawatts of wind capacity in the desert. And why do they want to do that? They want to do that because they have seen it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense when they look at their forecast of where the prices are going to go on fossil fuels. It is not because they're afraid to run out of resources of gas, but it makes much more economical sense for them to think differently about their own energy mix in Saudi Arabia. So what do you do when you live in Saudi Arabia and do not have one wind turbine installed? You come and visit us in Europe to see how do we do it. How have you done it in Denmark? How do you handle the grid? How are you going about getting this done so we can learn from it and we can work together with you? These are some of the opportunities that will drive economic growth in Europe by integrating much more with a very exciting country like Saudi Arabia. Another country is, for instance, Brazil. Brazil, again, a huge country with a lot of economic growth that is rethinking the way they're going to do the energy mix. And here we are going to talk, and this was also alluded to, that we have to talk about economy. So let me just leave with you how Brazil look on economy. When you have to get involved in the energy market in Brazil, you have to come with a firm price for the next 20 years as the obligation to the country of the power you would like to deliver. In Brazil, they call it the layouts. And in the latest layouts, wind was by far the cheapest of the offers on the table. And why was that? Because if you make a bet on wind for the next 20 years, you know the capital cost, you know the predictability, and you feel pretty certain that you can guarantee the price for the next 20 years. If you have to make a bet with some of the other sources of energy on fossil fuels, people are much more hesitant to give certainty on the price. Because in Brazil, you have to stand by this for the next 20 years. So I hope that when people going forward are going to talk about economy, they're not going to talk about the price at the pump today, but they're going to talk about the price as we see it over the next 20 years. And obviously, we need to make sure that in the target setting we're going to do here in Europe, that we take this into account. But it is much easier to understand what is it costing tomorrow. But when you have to put your hands on the stove and say, I'm going to stand by this price for the next 20 years, people are taking a lot of these uncertainty into account. And we obviously hope that this will mean some kind of inspiration for the target setting and the understanding of the security of the prices of energy, which is really what business is after. I would just like to thank everybody for coming here today, and please come and visit us at the Vestas stand if you want to hear more about it, and then I will give the word back to the moderator. Thank you very much.